So we have all of this. So I think I'll go ahead and have you all turn it in. So let me go ahead and share my screen so you can see where to be putting this. The screen will work.
Okay.
That's Maya. Don't put it in Maya. So under content, all of our submissions should be going under assignments here, and then we have the submissions tab, and submit project and exercises here. And I already have an exercise 1 step folder right there.
Okay.
Actually, a lot of people already beat me to it. Oh, you know what I just realized? I've only made one of these for both classes. So I'd say some of this is people from my next class as well. So, boy, that's interesting. I don't know why that slipped my mind that was going to happen that way. But yes, that makes total sense. But that's fine. Actually, yeah. Just looking at steppy.avi. So that's where you can submit it. And what I'd like to do is I need those so I can grade them, but and I may end up changing these links up just a little bit so that splits it up for project 1 a little bit better to keep it organized. But really, this isn't that big of a deal. To be able to have it all in one place is actually kind of nice on some level. So I may end up keeping it like this. But this means you have access to this too, right? You should be able to click on that link and click on these anytime you want to and watch them. What I'd kind of like to do, so I'm torn. I want to watch these, but I don't know that I want to do a full-on critique day today, right? And the reason for that is because we got a lot to kind of get into. I'd also like to go ahead and start on to project 1 and talk about some of the project write-up for that. And I have a little bit of a lecture on that as well. Hopefully it's a little bit more concise. So why don't we do this? Why don't I go through and just kind of click through everybody's piece who has one up here. And we'll just kind of watch them briefly. And if we have a couple of little comments, we can. But we'll try to spend less than like 30 minutes on just kind of looking at all of these. Let me go ahead and open up my participants list so it's easier to fish through these.
Hey, Greg.
Yes.
The Chrome OneDrive player does not like .movs.
Does it? What?
No.
Oh. Well, you know what that means. I may have to download these. So, Nathan Boer in here or in my next class? I'll see him in here. So, Elijah. I'm not sure who is this?
Oh, that's Alicia.
Yeah.
Okay. Diary.
Sorry.
Okay, I got you.
You might want to refresh. I just put mine in.
Yeah, I think mine's not there right now.
Yeah. I wonder. Let's refresh here. Who else here? Hamner. Cafferty, are you in here? That's the next class, isn't it? What's Jeremy's last name? It is. Kincaid. Okay, so that is. Okay. Perch, McFerrin, Regan, Hadron. Is this Sandra? Is that one yours, or is that it just says Sandra?
I think so.
Sandra says so. Okay, cool. Smith in here? That's right, okay. Savannah Steppy. I don't know that Steppy's in it. Oh, did I skip Alex? I was thinking he was in the.
Oh, right here.
There you go. Yeah. I didn't see you in here, so I was getting you confused on which class you were in. Okay. Actually, you know what? Seems to be easier if I just downloaded everything, doesn't it? Let's just do that. Download. And so this may take a minute. I don't see any files that are enormous in here. Alex is a little big. I don't see any hundreds of megabytes files in here. Okay. You know what? This may work. This may work better. So I may try the. I had not really thought this through as like, how do we watch through these in class effectively? Have I missed anybody? Has anybody recently put theirs up there that I just? Hopefully it'll just download all of them anyway.
Well, I was going to say it plays the MP4 as well. I was just saying mine in particular, being an MOV, it doesn't want to play.
Yeah.
So you could have watched through all of them and just like downloaded the MOVs.
Yeah, mine was an MOV also.
I can pull them all on my desktop and just do them that way. And
Trying to convert it, but DaVinci isn't want to reopen.
okay. I also have, this will make this a little easier for me here. I have a player that I think works a little bit better for playlists called S Player. There we go. I don't need Microsoft Edge for anything, actually. There we go. Where is my, there it is. All right, cool. Let's watch through a few of these. What do you say? So how I'm going to do this is just drag and drop them all into a playlist here. I can watch. Cool.
I did several like videos.
Yeah, let's go. Uh-oh. Looks like S Player doesn't like AVIs either. Yeah, it's probably, yeah, I can do, I bet it's, yeah, if it's not liking whatever that codec is, Elijah. So, oh, that's cool. Oh, that was good. Oh, why is it not? Oh, you got it looping a few times. I thought it'd get stuck. Ah, Alex. Yeah. Oh, that was interesting. Whatever, Steppy AVI messed up as well. What's this one? Oh, that's the AVI. All right, cool. I'm gonna go through here and pull these AVIs out of here so they play through pretty smoothly. Oh, and that's a MOV. If y'all have one you want to upload, like if it didn't play yours and you have another one you want to upload, let me know when you've uploaded it, and I'll go ahead and pull that one down too. So, all right. So this is not how I'll do like the big critiques when we're going to look at the like one of the projects. But a critique can end up taking up an entire class. So one of the ways I do sometimes do like smaller things that we can all. So what I would have done in a live class where everybody was here live is what I call the parade, which is basically everybody gets it up playing on their computer, and you just walk around and check out everybody's stuff, right? And it's fun because you can stop and look at one for a little while. You can have conversations briefly, and everybody gets a chance to sort of show off what they've done, but it doesn't end up having to be like eating a big chunk out of the live section of the class, so, or the lecture section of the class, and I'm sure you're also going to want to meet up with your groups and talk with other things as well. So this works pretty well. We can kind of glance through all of them, kind of see what everybody's done. Kind of briefly, anybody see anything that struck them as like some that were really good, some that had any specific issues you want to talk about, any consistent issues you're seeing across some of them?
The one with where she was testing like the six ground solid, it's like it was very good, like it gave a character, but at the end it kind of like shifted me like at the end.
Gotcha. So like the one where she's like reaching for it and like testing it, and yeah, and that one I think ended up being I think that may be Savannah here. I think that one ended up being a little long, but I think like if you can boil it down to the essence of this, of what you're going for, and sort of speed this up to where you can still communicate a similar thing, but like let's say in like 7 or 8 seconds, I think that would help. I think the other thing, I'm not sure if this is what you were saying, like she kind of overshoots just a little bit at the end of that step, like right there.
Yeah, it's like in a direction.
And it would be hard to push yourself back because your feet are both angling sort of behind. So maybe just not have her overshoot quite that far. That's one of the cool things about this is once we get to that graph editor stage of this, it's very easy to scale some curves. So any others that y'all saw that were like something stuck out to you as either really good or something to like kind of talk about? You want to watch through them again? All the way through? Cool. I like Brad showing his progress here at the beginning too. This is a neat way of seeing this. Oh, it's temporarily done that thing where it freezes up. I gotta close it and reopen it, and it'll fix it. Really? Did it keep the playlist though? It did. I think we'd stopped at Sandra's here. Yeah, cool. Okay, this time around, anybody spot anything that they particularly liked, or any specific one they particularly liked that you want to chat about?
I like number 3, I think. I think it's number 3. The arm animation was really good.
Was it,
Um,
or was it the?
it was the one with the grid behind it.
Oh, let me see. What is happening, player? There it is. Is it this one?
Yeah.
Yeah, this one's very fluid. So this is Alicia, is that right?
Yes.
Yeah, you got some really nice, like, getting those arms to kind of react to the way this is moving. You got the nice, I think one of the other things that is worth, doing in that polish pass that we may have not gotten to in this round, is taking parts of the body that that are kind of at the extremities, like maybe like the nose or maybe the tips of the fingers or even the top of the head, right? And doing an arc track on those. And you're going to notice a couple of things, like a nice arc, for the nose for this maybe looks like, it's got this swoop out and this dip in, and then it's kind of doing this again and just kind of settling, right? And you see you got these nice swoopy arcs. And all you got to do is do that editable motion trail. Like, it's a little bit of a trick. What you can do is put a locator where you want it to be on the character, and then just constrain that locator to the head control. And you will be able to then run that editable motion trail on the nose. And that's sort of like one of those last steps of cleanup. And what you may be seeing on some people's, if we kind of watch them, is that they're really good, but there's some hitches in the arcs, right? Instead of being all swoopy like this, maybe it gets to here and then there's like a weird jag, and then it does something like this and then kind of comes back, right? And it's like it's almost there, right? But it's those little hiccups that we're seeing that kind of like really subtle pops in the motion, right? And you'll see those on the extremities more than you'll see them as clearly, like if you were tracking the arc on the root control here, right? And that's because that root control is totally being controlled by the translation and the rotation that is on that root, right? But the head, right, or the nose, right, this part right here, is being affected by not only this control, but this control, the neck control, and the head control, right? There's lots of little areas in there where just a slight keyframe that is off, or a curve that flattens out too quickly, could cause a little jitter in it, right? And so doing that arc track on those extremities really cleans it up. Now, you got to be careful not to over polish those arcs, and over polish and like get it too clean, because sometimes that will take away some of the punchiness of your animation. Like if you want something to hit hard, then you're going to have an arc. Let me try that again. You're going to have an arc that kind of hits hard and changes directions, right? And sometimes you want that, and if you polish that out with this, right, then your impact isn't as impactful, right? So you got to be careful there a little bit, but usually you can tell the difference. Like if you just remember, this is where I want that impact, or this is where I want it to speed up quickly, you can show that. And I think that's one of the things that Alicia has done really well here, which is, did you intentionally go back and like polish those, or clean up those arcs, or is this just kind of like happened really well because of the graph editor?
I worked a lot in the graph editor, and then I did a couple of motion trails just to see like what it looked like, but I didn't really edit them much.
Yeah. I don't actually do editing on the motion trail. It's more like I use the motion trail to tell me where I need to work in the graph editor. And then occasionally, if it's just not working in the graph editor, I fix it with a pose, right? It's like, oh, I can't get that arc on the hand perfect in the graph editor. I'm just going to go put the hand exactly where I need it for every frame. So let's watch it again. Yeah, that's excellent. Great work.
Thank you.
I know. I always dislike it when like the only critique you get is good critique. Like it's like only thumbs up. There's always something that you could kind of work around on this. One of the things I would look at on this is how your toe touches the ground when you're coming in here. The player won't get out of my way. Right now, it's like the foot is kind of flat to the ground already. And so I think you could just kind of reach this toe out a little bit more at an angle, almost like have your big toe hit there first. And what ends up happening is a lot of people will grab that control for the foot and pick it up, and it stays in the same, like, you know, if this is the ground, the bottom of the foot stays at the same orientation as the ground. And really, as you're picking up your foot, maybe your toe is leaving the ground first, and as your foot's coming down, maybe your toe is or touching the ground first. And it's like just all those angles, like try to find little ways of leading the eye, right? If this continued to reach and point to the ground like this, and maybe just a little bit more smooth, right? Having said that, like that and maybe doing a little bit more dynamic stuff on the hand poses are the only little things I can see on this that need any work. So yeah, great job on this. Good work. Who is it? JD's in my next class, right?
Yes.
That's what I thought. Yeah, so I'm just kind of curious about his. That's an interesting take on it. I know a lot of people did a couple of different takes on it. So any comments that anybody have? Like, want to check out a different one, or thoughts about any of them? Go ahead and let them kind of play.
Just want your comments on mine.
Huh? You were wanting comments on yours?
Yeah.
Well, let's go back and check it out. So any, yeah, I think, let me, this player's getting buggy again. It's the only problem with this player is that I think it starts to eat too much RAM after a while. I'll just pull yours up by itself. So yeah, my big thoughts on this, I actually really like the posing that you have. You got this, that's looking good. I like this. And then the push through here is looking good. The only thing I would say is, like, it kind of feels like you hit a wall right there. It's like everything kind of
Yeah.
stops right there together.
I was feeling that too, so I was just.
Yeah, just getting a little bit more, it feels like it's maybe needing one more keyframe to kind of settle, to where, like, you know, the foot gets there and then the hips maybe just sort of settle back into it a little bit.
Yeah. I also got some photo reference for that footage to help me do this.
Cool.
So that was very useful.
Yeah. One of the things I do like about this is what happens in the head. The head is already on its way over there before the rest of the body is, right? It's like the head and the foot kind of lead this. They get there kind of early and they're kind of looking in that direction. And then this foot here, you could probably also continue to push with it. So it's kind of doing that thing where it comes up flat again.
Yeah.
You could continue to, like, push off on the toe. I'm a terrible drawer. That's why I do 3D animation. You know, continue to push with the toe and make it feel like that. Like, really, if you think about it, like when you're pushing yourself with your foot, right, to in any direction, right, think of it sort of like a rocket trying to get off the ground, right? Like, it's going to keep thrusting. That rocket's going to keep pushing until it absolutely can't anymore, right? It's not like they, like, fire off a rocket and use half of the fuel and then they're like, let's just hit pause and conserve the rest of this until, you know, we're in space. Like, it's really about getting all the maximum force you need to make that transition happen, right? And our body isn't very wasteful. Our muscles don't push harder than we need them to. They push just hard enough to efficiently make that motion happen, right? And we just learn that over years. We don't learn it, it's our brains learn it, right? And so really what that usually means is your toe is going to push until the last possible minute that it needs to. And so if it comes off the ground earlier than it might need to, then it's kind of wasteful. It's kind of like to be able to make that motion, you had to put more energy in it just to be able to pick your foot up earlier, right? And there are times you would need to do that, but in most cases, you're going to continue to push with that foot until your leg doesn't reach anymore, and then it will carry across, right? Or until your leg is urgently needed somewhere else. Cool. Did I miss anybody else's? Anybody else have Any other ones that they uploaded a little later or anything? Anybody?
Greg, I think that the player at school has MOV abilities.
Yeah, that's what I thought. You know what? You're right. I wonder. So it's not playing just straight with this. Maybe it will play. I don't think it's the MOV. I think it's the codec that is on the MOV. So VLC.
It came straight out of Maya for
okay.
the Play Blast.
Okay, that's working. There we go. Cool. That's looking good, Elijah. I guess I could probably just hit this loop button so we could watch it over and over again. Small note, I feel like there's a little bit of a hand pop as it's crossing on the character's left hand, like right there. That kind of quickly dips down below his leg and then pops back up. And maybe just smooth that out a little bit. And I think maybe you could drag the character's right arm just a little longer and have it sort of gradually catch up on that. But all of the feet and the weight stuff is looking really good. Yeah, that's awesome. Who else didn't play? So that's a duplicate. Is Steppy a duplicate? It's 0 bytes. I have a feeling it's just not going to play.
Yeah, there was nothing in it.
Yeah, no. Okay. So that might be somebody who was uploading something and realized they named it something I wouldn't understand. So, awesome. Okay. So, as for this exercise, it's going to minimize some of this stuff and go back to just not sharing my screen. So as far as this exercise goes, this is new. Like, this is something that has not been in the class in the past. And I did that because I feel like I was trying to squeeze that into Project 1 as well. And then I was seeing people get all the way up to portfolio who are just like, you know what, you really need to be thinking about weight a little bit more in terms of a human. And so I started that off a little different this semester than I usually do, right? And I actually think that this went pretty well. I do think that there's a little bit of cleanup that people could do on a few things. How are you feeling about it? Are there anything, just since it is kind of a new project, or a new exercise, is there anything specific that you wish would have went differently? I think next time I'll use a different rig because I don't like that her arms don't have a global option. But there were some other rigs up there that people did decide to use. But comments, thoughts about it? Did you enjoy it?
Yeah, personally, I enjoyed it. Yeah, I thought it was a good, get back into the groove exercise.
Yeah, that was kind of my hope too. Like, it wasn't just like push you into the deep end of the pool as soon as you're back, and give you time to get the sleep out of your eyes before we hit the ground too hard here. Well, having said that, it is an exercise, but I think several people's came out really good. And an exercise is something that can go into a demo reel, right? It doesn't have to be that just your projects go into a demo reel. You may want to give it a little more context or something to make it entertaining, but really what you're showing there is weight. And for a student demo reel, if you're applying to a junior position, maybe have the character dodging something, like a ball flying through or something like that. And I think I think that you may actually get something valuable out of it. Even if all you got out of it was knowledge, like, that's not worth nothing, right? Like, that's worth something. Hopefully you take that and can apply it to these future projects. So thank you all for the effort on that. I think it actually turned out really good. Give yourselves a yay. Did you realize there's new emotes in Zoom? Or I don't know if emotes, reactions? There's,
dang, I didn't notice that.
All I have is a thumbs up and a clap. Do you all have more?
Let's see, there's like a little party, streamer's heart,
Do you have
there's
the
like a whole
speed up,
bunch
slow
of,
down buttons? There's like a fast forward, rewind button, pause button. You do? Or
Other side, Michael.
Yeah, I don't know. I've seen those in other Zoom meetings. There's a button that was like speed up, slow down. That would be like kind of neat. I don't know what Michael's doing. um, anyway, cool. All right, thanks y'all. I think that actually turned out really good. That encourages me because really this is it's not a test, but it's we're getting ready to put a lot of time into a very large project, right? And let's say that this was a project you threw away, right? This exercise was an exercise you threw away, and you're like, I learned something from it. That's awesome. But the result was bad, right? Like, I finally understand weight, but this animation is garbage and I'm going to throw it away, right? Then you wasted at the most a week, right? Instead of the 3 weeks or however many we spend on this next project, where you're like, oh, I finally understand weight, but those 3 weeks were a wash, right? I don't have anything to show for it. Hopefully now this weight, this is something that very directly transfers into the next project. So I've also changed that project up a little bit as well. For those of you who are repeating, you're going to notice some stuff is a little different. Did our class get smaller? I feel like there's, wait, maybe not. I feel like my participant list shrank. Ah, it didn't. It's just scaled down in D2L. There they are. There's everybody. So let's take a minute really quickly. I'm sure you all have kind of looked forward, but I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, and we are going to go to D2L, everybody's favorite learning portal, right? You're like, I don't need no stinking Canvas. I don't need no stinking Blackboard. I love you, D2L. Yeah. Actually, they actually all suck. Like, that is the secret. I've worked in all of the different learning portals. They were created by people who have never learned before, apparently, because none of them are very user friendly. Like, the way I have to create stuff in D2L is just ridiculous. Like, it's absolutely like, hire a UI UX person, y'all. Like, having said that, I've finally like kind of worked my way around it, and I think it's better than nothing. Which is like good. I think it's about as about.
I love like just giving faint praise to something.
Just faintly. It doesn't suck as bad as it could have. So, saying that, if we step back a little bit, our table of contents, and look at our assignments, I'd like to go ahead and jump into our Project 1 assignment, just talk about it a little bit, because really, that's where we're going to start today, okay? I know you all probably aren't ready to start setting keyframes yet, and in fact, there's a date in here that I'm just going to change live while we're looking at it. I was really hoping to kind of get to looking at this project last class period, but I feel like we kind of pushed it to the end, and I don't want it to. I really don't want to fill up every second of class with me talking. So I kind of pushed this off a little bit. I don't think it's going to really affect us too much. But let's go ahead and click on the body mechanics right up here. So body mechanics is, like what we just did was a very simple step, right? It was very like a simple action. What I'd like to do now is just sort of make it more complicated, right? Make these actions more challenging. I have changed up what I've realized in the past is I used to give some examples of what you could do. And I've kind of changed those up a little bit and made them a little more vague, because what ended up happening is people would do directly that animation, and like the fire hydrant, we were just starting to see too many of them, and it's like, I kind of want to see, like, I want you to have to flex some creativity a little bit in coming up, what is your character doing, right? So the full body is a system acting together. It's not a series of separate body parts. The way the body moves together and reacts to physics of the world is called body mechanics, right? And we've been talking about that. How does our body react to gravity, friction, all of those things? That's the body mechanics, right? This will be the first exercise, I guess this should really say project, in dealing with a full human character and the body mechanics of these motions. It's really, I guess, the second, but the first big one. This exercise will also force you to work on the pose-to-pose method, which is the advised way to start organizing your own workflow. So I kind of did some of that for you on the exercise, right? We talked about what our main poses needed to be. I can't answer that question for you on your project when it's a much more complicated action. Part of the pose-to-pose workflow is figuring out what information do I need in this? What is it that I have to define with my poses for future me so I can continue to move forward, right? But the pose-to-pose workflow is very tested, right? I would say that I use it, I really don't know an exact percentage, but if I had to guess, I would say 95% of the animations I've ever created have been some variation of pose-to-pose. I would say 100% or 99% had elements of pose-to-pose with just a little bit of straight ahead in them, right? Straight ahead animation is really like something that you can't predict, right? A character stumbling and falling, right? Sometimes that's just like you're not hitting distinctive poses, everything is flailing at all times. And there are times where you can sort of break stuff down into the moving parts. And so you're not really necessarily doing straight ahead, you're doing more like layering of animation, layering of motions. But pose-to-pose is really important in trying to figure out body mechanics because we have stuff like when does a foot contact the ground? So we're gonna go on to that here in a minute. So what we're actually doing, using a character, any character you want, right? Nothing, I would advise it be nothing with a fully articulate face, right? Try to find a character like those bony or beefy rigs, or like there are other body mechanics rigs, but try to find something without a face just so you don't have to worry about the face. I would, if you find one, you're like, I want to use this one and it has a face, okay, I'm all right with that. Recognize that I will also critique it if it has a dead face, right? If you get a face, you have to animate that face too, right? You got to make this thing feel finished. Using a character, preferably no articulate face, and one of the pick options listed below, animate a character moving through a series of small obstacles. Don't overcomplicate it, right? Like I've seen so many times where it's, this character has to open a box and see what's inside. And it's like 30 seconds into it, they haven't even touched the box yet. They're still like, it's a box. Look at this box I just found. I think I will open this box. Let's open the box, right? And I'm like, no, just like get to it. Like show us, boil it down to its essence, right? And make that essence entertaining. Pick from this list of scenarios. So character jumping over gap in the floor. So this would be at least 2 jumps, right? Not just a single jump. It would be like there's a couple of gaps in the floor. They're kind of hopping over them, right? Why are there gaps in the floor? Like, where does this person live? Are they in a cave? Are they in a haunted house? Like, what is going on here, right? Character stepping up and or down on a pedestal of some sort. Or I guess a platform maybe would have made more sense to say. It doesn't have to be like they're stepping up on stage. It could just be a rock. It could be a stage. It could be they're stepping up a set of like stairs, right? Or it could be they're stepping up to the second place spot in an Olympic medal ceremony or something, right? Like whatever it is you're wanting to put into this, they're stepping up on something. Character stepping around obstacles on the floor. This would be at least 3 steps. Think of like an example I did of this in the past was somebody is just put a baby to sleep in the crib and they're trying to sneak out of the room without stepping on any squeaky toys, right? Something like that, right? They're trying to step around them. Or maybe you finally found the spot where your spouse has been taking the dog to poop and you're like, crap, there's just a bunch of landmines everywhere. I got to try to get through this, right? Yeah, I take that one back. The world has enough poop jokes, but you get the idea. Whatever it is, you're trying to not step on something, or you're trying to step around them, or maybe they're more dangerous obstacles. Maybe they're like spikes or a bunch of like thumbtacks have been put on the floor, right? Characters sneaking around a corner. Like, why are they sneaking? Are they part of a strike team, like sneaking into, or are they trying to sneak in late because they've been out drinking, right? Like, don't put too much acting into this, but show us a little bit of what's going on in this scene to make it appealing, right? Character turning around and looking for something, right? I like to think of this one as like the Travolta, like the meme that everybody has where Travolta's all like this. Like, is it something like that? Is there, I don't know. Maybe they had a piece of paper in their hand and it blew out of their hand and they're like trying to find it, right? Really what I'm trying to get you to do is to make your character's feet leave the ground more often, right? One of the things that will start to feel very, like there's all these telltale signs of student work. And one of them is that the animation seems to be afraid to pick the feet off the ground, right? Like small foot shuffles is something we do all the time. Like just standing here, I'm shifting my feet like every 10, 15 seconds involuntarily, right? Our body becomes very good at that, and animating that is kind of hard. Right? And so these are impetus, like things to spur you to make you pick your character's feet up off the ground and have to challenge or have to face these physics challenges, right? Okay, I've intentionally tried to make, like, I can't tell you how, like, it feels like 25% of my job as a teacher is me begging you not to make your life harder, right? And usually I would say this animation should not exceed 10 seconds. I would expect it to be 5 to 7 seconds. I have scaled this back. I want you to use your creativity to make it happen in under 7 seconds, okay? And I'm going to make that a hard limit. So that is part of the challenge. Try to make this happen in a reasonable amount of time, right? Recognize that there are reasons for that, right? I've had animations like that had a very, one of the ones I'm working on right now has a very hard timing deadline, right? It has to fit into this action within this many seconds, right? For game animation, it gets even tighter. It's like sometimes it's like your character has to be actually punching, like actually making contact with the thing they're punching in 3 frames from the beginning of the animation. You're like, how is that even possible? Like, you have to make stuff happen in very set deadlines. And it's like, if you're animating for a TV commercial and they're like, we only have 30 seconds, they're gonna cut us off after 30 seconds. Then you have to make it fit in there, right? And so see that as that challenge, right? 5 is sort of like the minimum, 7, the maximum. And that's because it could also be very easy for you to try to phone this in and be like, 2 quick steps, done, 2 seconds, right? Like spend a little bit of time in there and aim in that 5 to 7 seconds range. We're at 24 frames per second, so feel free to break out that calculator and do 24 times 5 or 24 times 7. And then you can set your timeline to that before you even start, right? Do it. Yeah, yeah. So having said that, let's keep reading here a little bit. You will turn in a rendered video. Let me minimize this here. You will turn in a rendered video of the animation. MP4 compressed with the H.264 codec is best. If you choose to do a play blast, please remember to hide the rig controls so that we can see the animation without being obscured by the controls. I would also, like, it's not required, but it is an option to, if you want to turn in your Maya file, Sometimes I am able to, like, if I'm giving you critique or something, I can open that up, look at it. I'm not going to require it, but you can also turn that in. I'll tell you, one of the benefits of doing that is some of you will lose your hard drive someday and come back to me and be like, Marlo, did I give you anything for that project that could still be salvaged? And sometimes I'll have some Maya files. Like, I recognize you don't have to do that. Please don't give me the entire project with all of your references and all of the texture files and all of that. But if you need to just turn in the Maya file for the animation, that's fine. So this project is also eligible for any animators wanting to work in 2D. Actually, that's true for I believe, for every project in the class. Maybe not every exercise. There may be some exercises where I'm specifically focusing on something that is not animation, right? It may be like curves or the graph editor or something like that. As of now, I don't think I have anything, but I want to kind of preface that. But the 4 projects are definitely all open to 2D animation. I will say, is anybody in here wanting to do 2D animation? No? Oh, that's my 3D crowd. If you are, Leilani is, okay. If you are, I've emailed about it. I've gotten a response. My plate has been very full for the last 24 hours, so I haven't had a chance to look at it. But we have Toon Boom Harmony Premium in the labs here. And basically what I did is I contacted them and asked them if we could get some home use versions of that. There's like a COVID home use thing that they have. And they've sent me something that I'm pretty confident is yes, here they are. So if that's something you need at home, because you're working exclusively from home, please contact me and I can get you a copy of that license. We have a limit of 20, but I don't see us exceeding that. There's usually just a small group of people who really want to do 2D. I would say if you're going to do this in 2D, chat with me so we can talk about like sort of the scope of what we want to do. And the rendered animation is due on the dates below. Hey, I didn't get that date wrong. So you'll need to come to class on January 28th, that's next class period, with at least 3 minutes of video reference, okay? So that's not a due date, but that is like, really to get started, I really just need to make sure everybody recognizes that that's the first step, right? And the project itself is due Tuesday, February 16th, right? Okay, questions? No. Okay, anybody have ideas already for what they want to do?
Yep.
Yep, couple? All right, cool. Okay. Let me go ahead and pull D2L out of the way here. So you'll notice I did mention next class period, come in with some video reference, right? I wanted to briefly talk about video reference, and for those of you who will remember in D2L, under the resources, there's that long like resource list. There's a couple of updates I still need to make to D2L. Glenn pointed one out to me over the weekend that I missed, which is I forgot to upload that splining sheet. And that will probably end up going somewhere in the resources section, but I will link you to it in the news when I post the news. There are some other things I'm going to be going over today that the last time we went over this, everybody was in this room. And so I have those files stored up on the ETSU E3 server, and they're pretty big. Let's see how today goes and see if we actually need that, because really all it is these time-lapse videos of me working, and you may want to watch those. If you do, I could put them on like OneDrive, and that way you have a link to them to pull them down, or you could log in through remote desktop to get them that way. If anybody's not familiar with remote desktop or AppStream, I realize that's something I've just kind of glossed over. I don't even know if I really have mentioned it in the last 2 classes. I assume everybody spent last semester figuring out how to get their work done, but those things still exist. If you still need AppStream or you still need to use remote desktop for like rendering or whatever, I can show you how to get access to that. I think that's all kind of solidified. where you could log in to one of these computers here and still be able to get to stuff on ETSU E3. I'm recording this video today, so we should have all of that on YouTube by the end of the day of me talking over these time lapses, which is probably more beneficial to you than just the time lapses themselves. But there are other things like that pick list, all that stuff that I think would be beneficial for you. So I'll be putting that stuff up soon. So, however, remember this animation resource list. Actually, let's go back one. If you're curious about which rig to use, that's completely up to you. You can use any of these rigs I've already downloaded, but that wasn't necessarily what I've downloaded them for. You can also go to this animation resource kit. I will say the Truong rigs are really good. There's lots of rigs out there. So spend a little bit of time thinking about which rig you want to use. You probably don't even need to have the rig open yet anyway, though, because first we're going to think about the performance, right? But sometimes you want to know the rig. You want to know what the character looks like to know what you need to do your reference for. So again, there's all sorts of rigs in here to use. You can choose to use some of the free ones. There are some like moderately cheaper ones. And so there's tons of stuff in here. You know, if anybody who is repeating the class have some like horror stories they need to share with their groups about which rigs not to use, that's cool. I've not animated with every one of these. This rig is pretty good. Like this Tiger rig is a good one. That's free. The ones I was mentioning, the Truong rigs, they're usually kind of lower. So these are the body mechanic rigs. Already have those up on the thing. Josh Sobel's rigs are good. The one I was thinking of right here, this guy, Truong rigs. Most of them are free. Some of them are like $1 or so. All of those are pretty solid rigs that you could use for most stuff. If you go up a little higher, this animation buffet is basically just a link to another like website about rigs. Like there's a whole bunch of them. Is it still working? There it is. And basically like it's just page after page after page of free rigs, right? Again, not all of them are going to be great. Like some of them are going to have issues. Actually, I think there's a male version of this. Like there's a Artemis, and I don't remember what the other character's name is. It actually looks pretty cool to me. Like they're these like Greek statue-looking characters. So lots of places to find rigs. If you want some recommendations, though, we can chat about that a little later. I didn't want to micromanage that too much. Right? I didn't want to like say only use these rigs. Because some of you may have some ideas that you need a specific rig for. So the other thing I wanted to talk about is in this animation resource list, if we scroll all the way down to the bottom here, if you'll remember, I have a section where I'm making fun of other people's YouTube pages. Now, it's basically where I am pointing out what not to do with video reference, right? I want you to check out some of these. Let's maybe watch a couple here. Sorry if the people who made these are currently watching this video. Yeah, let's just copy this one. Okay. Does that not work? Okay, I have to use Control-C, Control-V apparently. Interesting. So here's one that I found. Really, like you can find tons of these if you just search animation video reference, right? There's so much bad video reference out there. And so really video reference is something that that you will use to see the things that you can't see on yourself, right? And so this is stuff that everybody totally would have thought to do, right? This character walks in uncomfortably, right? Sort of like neutrally. I I don't know what that 1 second thing is about. And then like slowly, not like somebody who's really like hunting and somebody who's athletic at all, gets down on one knee, does this shush to somebody, but nobody really directly. And then this is the worst part to me. Okay. Recognize that this does not do any of the things that you want video reference to do. Video reference should be you getting into the character that you're trying to portray, right? And finding things that you didn't expect to happen, or finding things that you didn't know were things that you did, right? Now, he may get some of that out of this, but it's very stiff feeling, right? This does not feel like a real person who might be in this situation doing this, right? And so I think it's because this person is too conscious of the fact that he is shooting video reference, right? So you'll notice in my assignment, I said, get 3 minutes of video reference. 3 minutes is like low end in terms of the amount, right? Usually what I do is I set up a camera to record my video reference, and then I let it play, and usually I capture somewhere in the neighborhood of probably 10 to 20 minutes of video reference for one shot, right? Because I guarantee you the first 5 minutes are garbage, right? I'm gonna throw it away, right? Like I was doing what this guy just did, right? Everybody is, like, we're non-trained actors, like, well, maybe some of you are that I don't know about, but we're all going to do a bad performance. And the worst thing is once you get in front of a camera, you're uncomfortable, we're all going to do the most expected and boring solution to this the first time we do it, right? The point of video reference is to exhaust all of your options. Like, your best option may be the seventh idea you have, right? And for me, usually what I do is I start to find it when I do it over and over and over again. So I will show you. Let me get my folder back up here. So yeah. So I slowly start to find the take that I need, right? And then I trim it down after the fact, right? I rarely, like, I'm just doing it over and over and over and over and over. And then I go back and watch it like a spectator, right? I am learning from this video reference what is actually a good take. And sometimes the take that I think is good is actually too big or too, like, I don't know, like it just doesn't fit the character, right? And sometimes things that I did not think were actually going to be good as a form of video reference ends up being good. So I'm going to show you sort of the process I go through for one of my characters. So I don't know if y'all can hear this. Let me share my screen again. Maybe a little loud at first. Hopefully not. Let me turn this down. So this was for Gajamada and Civ 5. I was younger back then, like 10 years ago. And this is for basically hello. This is neutral hello. The line for that in Indonesian is bagyo. And it's basically greetings or welcome, right? And so these are the two takes that I ended up getting out of what was probably, I would say probably 5 to 7 minutes of video reference that I shot for this. Bagyo. Bagyo. So those were two different takes. I saved both of those takes because they both had elements that I liked. The first one, I liked that I'm stepping in, right? And so you'll see just in this step, like the same like we just did a step to the side, I shift my weight over to here, and then I'm making this gesture kind of from my gut, like I'm pushing my hand out from my gut. But it's a welcome, like a welcome gesture. and my head sort of throwing back at the same time. Recognize all of this came from me shooting this reference for a long period of time while thinking about who is Gajimata and what is he even saying here? Why is he saying this, right? Gajimata is a leader who is well known for being very powerful and very not afraid to protect his people, right? And so that means that this should be confident. That's why he's approaching you. Like, he's not scared of you. He's not holding his ground. He's coming out to meet you, right? And it should still, though, he wasn't a warmonger. He wasn't like somebody who, he wasn't Napoleon, right? He was here to protect his land, and if you were part of Gajimata's people, you were happy. But if you were one of his friends, you were happy too, right? So it should feel both welcoming but strong and maybe a little intimidating, right? And so, like, all of that's going through my head for those 5 minutes while I'm shooting this. Why would I take a step forward, right? Why would I act this way, right? And so I end up with these 2 clips out of all of that are combined only 4 seconds long, right? Those 4 seconds, though, are where I start to pull my blocking animation. What? Okay. Open with VLC.
Baguio.
A little loud, sorry about that.
Baguio. Baguio. Baguio.
And so you'll kind of notice the hand gesture is a little
Baguio.
different. The hand gesture comes more from the second
Baguio.
Video reference than the
Baguio.
first one. So these are my key poses. This is the blocking pass on this. And then, of course, from there, I spline this. Do a little audio on that again.
Baguio.
This audio is playing late.
Baguio.
That's not lining up.
Baguio. Baguio.
What's up with that?
Baguio.
Okay. And then finally, I don't know why.
Baguio.
That one's working better. I think it's a VLC thing. This is what it looks like in game, right?
Baguio.
Okay.
Baguio.
So again, all of that came from video reference. There are things I'm pulling from all of that in terms of timing, in terms of posing, and then I'm layering that into the animation. And if the video reference is this foundation of your plan, it needs to be thought through, right? It's not just like I did it so I have something. It's like it needs to add value to your animation. Or to your animation process. And so I would challenge you to watch through some of these, find reasons that these aren't working, and yeah, okay. Apparently it really does not like the right click option. So this is a good example here. Why is this one not good reference? Can't see the whole body. It's reference for a punch.
These are
And
terrible punches.
yeah, it's like, I don't know why he holds his arm out there so long after it's over with. Also, I think it's very important to recognize he's practicing for an animation where a character punches something. What does he punch? Nothing, right? Punching nothing feels way different than punching something. If anybody's ever punched something, right, you'll know that, right? So find something to punch that you're not going to injure or hurt, right? Like, find a soft, prop a mattress up against the wall and punch that, right?
Sure, I can't use my brother.
That's part of your own family dynamic that I'll let you sort out. But sometimes people do that. They're like, hold up a pillow for me, right? I've seen people who needed to animate a scare animation, somebody getting scared or frightened. So what they did is they had a friend hide somewhere in their house, and then they went looking for their friend. And their friend literally jumped out and scared them, right? and it was real. Like, it was a good take because it was a real reaction, right? Anybody ever watch How I Met Your Mother, the TV show? Yeah. There's an episode where, like, I love that show. Like, it's a great show for so many reasons. There's an episode where oh crap, how have I forgotten their names? Lily and the other one, Lily's husband, Marshall. Where Marshall hears some very bad news right at the end of the episode. It's some of the best TV ever made, really. The director did not tell him what the bad news was going to be, right? They let him go through the entire episode, filming the whole episode, having no idea what that was going to be that he hears until they started shooting, right? And they did that so they would get a genuine reaction, right? And so I guess my point with all of this is your first take of video reference is most likely not going to be your most genuine reaction. It's not going to be the best take. Exhaust this, right? This is not just I set up a camera for 10 seconds, I shot a thing, check, I'm done with that, right? Like, this needs to have a purpose and a use in your animation. And, like, there's something to me, just like, I got Control C, better not forget, Control C. There's actually just something kind of, apparently this person realized.
You missed an L. You missed the final L.
Oh, did I? Oh, okay. Yeah. Anyway. This person's probably working at like ILM right now or something. They're like, I posted that in 2012. Why are you making fun of me? But really, like, what it boils down to is, like, what is the value you could get out of this? And I think it's really important to recognize that that everybody is embarrassed by their video reference, right? Trust me, it took a lot of contemplating to be like, am I really gonna show them the video reference of me doing that? Let me see if I have this here. I know I do. There we go. So just to help you out a little bit, I thought I would share some of my embarrassing video reference. This is back before I got haircuts. Back before my wife started making me cut my hair. Maybe a little bit of this, where sometimes you just have to wear a bucket on your head, right? Everybody gets embarrassed by their video reference. There's plenty of bad video reference out there. And even though those brave souls and these YouTube links that I'm picking on, they were brave enough to put theirs out there in the world, that doesn't mean you have to, right? You're doing this for you. You are gathering information for you to know how your animation is going to go, right? Grilling out. This is a whole bunch of references, shot takes I did for a character grilling a burger. Like, I think at one point in the original reference, like, I would pause when cars would drive by so people wouldn't realize I was like such a bad actor. I'd be like, all right, I'll just wait. So I got so much bad reference out there.
I have to get to the others, please.
Point out this one is
You
almost
don't
it's 4
understand.
minutes.
I have to get to the others, please. You don't understand. I have to get to the others, please. You.
So I already knew exactly what the poses the character needed to be in were. This is still 4 minutes of video reference of me just testing out ways to get in and out of those poses, right? Ways to show that like tension in her face and all of that, right? Okay, so I guess the short version of that, the Cliff Notes version of that, shoot video reference, it's important. Now that I have exhausted that, let's jump into to some of this process, right? So I did kind of show you that process a little bit earlier, right? We shoot our video reference. Our next step, I think I have this in a, yeah, here we go. Yeah. So let's look at that. Let's look at that grilling animation that I just showed, like where I was shooting reference for grilling, right? Let's look at that one as like a step-by-step process. Obviously, as I talked about before, I'm going to shoot video reference. Got quite a bit of it out here. I think this was already edited together into 3 different takes. I think, if I'm not mistaken, it's a shorter version of 3 that I use, right? Now, the point of this, after you've gone through that, is to use this to tell me more about my physics. What am I doing body mechanics wise? What am I doing in terms of poses? What can I take from these poses that will help me add to the poses when I start blocking, right? Obviously, my reference was way too long, so I had to take the essence of parts of that and transfer that into this blocking pass, right? So again, this is the blocking pass in stepped mode. All right, this is only the poses. This is not me thinking in terms of transitions. This is me trying to tell the story in these main keyframes, right? And this is a question that a lot of people will ask. How do I know which are my key poses? Like, how do I know which ones to choose? Your key poses are the poses that are necessary to tell the story and necessary to communicate the action, right? I know that's very vague. It's because everybody will sort of have a different definition for some of that, and it's really based off of what you need later, right? Like, before you can move on to that next step, what information do you need in here, right? For me, I didn't do a ton of poses. Like, there's several of them in there. I did a little pose where the character's waving it off, right? The little wave. I did 2 poses there. The way I worked, like 2 or 3 poses where he kind of does a little wave, not here, but like that little wave there, right? As he's coming back. As I work right now, I maybe don't know that I would do that anymore. I maybe would do that differently, but that's because I'm a different animator than I was then. It's not because I'm a better animator. It's because I work differently, and your workflow will change. You are cluing in yourself for the next pass on what it is you need to know to move forward, right? And for this, like, my character can't, if like the hamburger just went from being on the ground to back up onto the grill, there's so much information that's lost there that does not communicate what happened, right? So the blocking pass has all that information. I should be able to show my blocking pass to a stranger, and they understand the essence of what happened, right? They can tell me the story back, right? They could probably even tell me a little bit about the character. Now, some people define blocking way more than that. They put a lot of keyframes in there, right? They keyframe everything. And again, that's a workflow process. Those people probably block for days and days and days, and then their splining process is shorter. And that's, again, just different people work differently. These terms are these terms are very general, but what your blocking is for you should, no matter what it should still convey to the director what it is you're trying to get across, right? Or to the lead. There's a term that I use called blocking plus, or the breakdown phase. And this is basically your blocking that we had, but I go in there and refine it and put more keyframes in between my main key poses, right? The reason I do this is for transition reasons. Just because I got those key poses of where everything needs to be at certain points. This animation was from when I was in Animation Mentor, so this is a long time ago. Just because I have those key poses of where everything needs to be at certain times doesn't mean I have all of the information on how we get from pose A to pose B, right? Like the transitions in between. You know, the character raising his hand right there to do that point, I need another breakdown to say, is that hand dragging or is that hand leading that motion, right? And so we'll talk about breakdowns a little bit later. This is after I've gone through all my splining process, right? I think I dubbed this one Final Play Blast. Final Play Blast 2, of course. And so this has got all the splining done. This has got all the graph editor work done, all the overlapping action done. This is actually what I turned in for that assignment when I was in that class. And of course, later I rendered it and put it in my demo reel. I will tell you that I revised this piece so many times. I was so convinced that I was a terrible animator by the time I made that piece, right? The teacher just kept working with me over and over and being like, that's not good enough, change these things, the way it doesn't feel right. I hated this piece, right? And was pretty convinced that I wasn't going to put it in my demo reel until the year I graduated from Animation Mentor. They have like awards for best animation for certain categories, and mine won best pantomime animation for my graduating class. And I was like, why? I thought this was terrible. Everybody kept giving me feedback on what was wrong with it. I want you to recognize that like how much effort you put into something will start to change how you feel about it. And so don't always, like, just because you worked really hard and something was a struggle doesn't mean it's a failure. And just because something was easy doesn't mean it was a success. I will say, even though I was relatively happy with that at the time, I did get better. And in 2018, I was reworking my demo reel, and this was rendered in a really low resolution. And I was like, I still like that piece. I would like to keep it, but there's some things I could make better on it. So in 2018, I actually did another revision on this shot. Let me open this up. Show you. And so a lot of what I was fixing here was stuff like IK pops on the knees and stuff like that. Little things like the way that burger flops and stuff like that. There were a lot of little things that I changed that I just felt like were feeling a little stiff on the old version of it. And then the final like rendered version of it is this. Okay. So I'll play that one more time. Okay. A lot of this, again, is about process. How do we step through this pose-to-pose process? And this blocking plus or breakdown, whichever title you want to give that, splining and polish is the process that we're going to go through in order to get all of this done, right? So I do want to hop into this next thing here. Let me do a different window so I can come back to this. So if you happen to be in the building, I can show you where this is at. ETSU E3, DIGM classes, Greg, character animation, and there's this resources folder. I also have some rigs. I have some other stuff in here. What I'll probably do is in the next little while, I'll pull this down and try to put the important stuff somewhere on a folder for you to be able to download from wherever you are. What I'm going to go through today is this blocking time lapse. Okay, so this is the process I went through, and basically 2 years ago, I basically animated this shot with my class, right? This is a little bit more of a complicated shot than maybe you're wanting to do, but I knew I wanted to use, I knew two things. I knew I wanted to use the Kayla rig, which is this little kid rig that I had bought a while back. It's one of the Josh Sobel rigs, and actually he's coming out with it's Kayla and Kyle. He's coming out with a Kayla and Kyle 2.0 relatively soon that have a better model, like a better mesh to it. So I knew I wanted to do like a little kid animation, and I knew I wanted to do something very physical, something very like action oriented, right? And so I started looking for video reference because as much as I want to shoot my own video reference, and I can shoot my own video reference for certain things, there are certain things I can't do, like a back flip or a front flip. And that's what I wanted, I wanted some sort of wall flip with this character. Luckily, there's this really amazing kid on YouTube who does like all sorts of crazy stuff. And this video comes from a clip called, I think it's called like 50 Amazing Wall Flips or 50 Amazing Flips or something like that. And so I just sort of yanked this to use as my reference, right? So what I really am wanting is character to kind of run up a tree, sort of settle at the top, do that flip, right? So you'll see like there's a lot that I can analyze from this. There's a lot that I can pull from this. And sorry, I'm getting back to my okay. So there's a lot of physicality in here that I never would have been able to get. And really what I want is to be able to pull from these parts of the clip to pose my character, right? Now, I will say there's a, everybody works differently, right? Some people lean very heavily on video reference to like, that they are practically like rotoscoping the poses. And my 2 cents, that is absolutely fine, right? Some people sort of glance at this to inspire how they're creating their poses, and maybe they use it more for timing. That's fine too. You use it to the extent that you need it, but recognize that your animation is not just a rendered version of your video reference, right? You are still the animator. You are, like, no matter how close you're trying to copy your reference, there's still a level of interpretation that has to go into that. You have to be able to look at this and say, this is how this would apply to my character, and I need to be able to analyze the character's body pretty closely. So I do want to sort of just take a minute and talk about, sort of hark back to animation fundamentals when we talk about pose, right? Most of you probably had Laura Osteen in that class, and you remember contrapposto, line of action, silhouette, right? A lot of times in this class, I will actually get us to draw over characters or images to practice this, right? I will say that I don't know. I'm uploading this to YouTube, and some of these have nudity in them. Will YouTube just boot my video if I do that? Should I find the ones that don't have? Let's find the ones that have no nudity in them to sort of talk about them, right? So again, with that contrapposto, line of action, silhouette, we get this guy. We have to look for contrapposto is that line that is going through his clavicle and his hips, right? And contrapposto means those are counter posture, right? And so they're never perfectly parallel with each other. Always trying to find some way to angle those dynamically. Our line of action is usually a curve you can draw through the character's spine that sort of tells us something about, you know, when I bend my clavicle and I bend my hips, it's going to cause my spine to adjust in order to get that pose, right? And then really we can figure out the rest of this pose by just sort of filling in those legs and arms, right? And those legs and arms are where we're going to start getting our silhouette for this, right? And so this is our character pose, right? And this is really how I think when I'm posing my character, right? When I go back and we can do this with a couple of others, right? You know, we get this guy in this pose. This is really the sketch that I would end up doing over this character, right? And all of this is really where what I'm pulling from that video reference to start making my pose, right? The thing about this with the interpretation of it is, you know, this is the pose. Can I push that further, right? If I'm looking at the angle of the contrapposto, what if I just push that a little bit? We got this silhouette for the sword that's kind of drawing our eye out there. Like, what if I just push that a little bit more like this, right? And that changes his contrapposto. And instead of this pose, I end up with something a little bit more like this, a little bit more exaggerated, right? Or I push it even a little bit more. I push it to something like this, even a little bit more exaggerated, right? Is this a stronger pose? Can I push my pose to something like this to increase how well it communicates, right? So that's really what I'm doing when I'm transferring this. And if it really helps, like, open up the snipping tool on your video reference, right? And just do that. Like this, let's back up a little bit to like this pose right here, right? I can do snipping tool, and I can start to look at these things I got, right? I got this, whoop, that is not what I meant to do. Let's do that again. I got this angle, really, blue. This angle for the clavicle, this for that. Got these arms that are kind of doing this, knees that are doing this. And my line of action is actually a little dull, but it's kind of like this, I think, right? A line through the head and the spine. Well, I mean, I could increase this pretty dramatically, right? Let's make this lime, and let's make my pen much bigger. And just push some of those things, right? I could really push the contrapposto, right? Is this contrapposto going to be more like this, maybe, right? In this pose. Can I make his knees like, you know, really sharply pointed this way, push him up on his toe a little bit? Maybe I'll add a little bit more less twinning to the arms, to where one's doing something slightly different than the other, right? And so really that's what I'm kind of doing in my head as I'm interpreting this, right? And I'm actually better at doing that in my head than I am with the snipping tool. But some of you, maybe like you pull out your sketchbook and you just start sketching these poses. How can you push it, right? So I'm going to walk through this next little bit faster in terms of process. So for me, the next thing I take in that video reference, and these are time-lapse videos of this. I am still sharing my screen, aren't I? Can you all see this? Yeah, you can. So we talked about this briefly last class period, where I'm basically converting this to a image sequence. I get this in there, choose a folder, source images, call it flip. I change that to JPEG. And of course, the most important part, I make sure that my frame rate, well, maybe not the most important part, I make sure my frame rate matches the frame rate that I'm going to be animating in Maya. Recognize for film, 24, games, 30. And so we'll talk about that maybe a little bit more in Project 2. After I get that exported out as a series of images, I go back into Maya, open up my setup here. I've already kind of got everything set up. I want to make sure my scene is sort of lined up the way I need it to be, to match my video reference a little bit better, or to match what I need to happen in the shot a little bit better. And then I just create a plane that is roughly the same proportions, or if possible, exactly the same proportions as my image sequence. It's 1920 by 1080, so you can do a 19 by 10 image or something like that. And then I just apply that image in there, so I can have this in my scene to animate to. Now I want you to, I don't know if I showed that, but one of the things I do in this, once I create that image, I choose the file, and then I make sure to check this Use Image Sequence button right there. And again, that will line up everything to where when I'm scrubbing my timeline, I can see the animation playback in real time in my scene, right? And this will help me a lot when I'm doing that, interpreting my pose into my reference into my pose, right? If y'all have questions at any point, slow me down, like stop me. Okay, so this next video is me creating the first 2 poses for my animation. So first things first, you see I'm using that placement control to get my character off screen, but then after that, I do not touch that placement control anymore. Like what I'm doing right now is sort of setting up my character to start this animation, right? A couple of things you'll note that I did here. I'm setting up the spine to be the IK spine that I want, right? Smoothing the character to the right amount, setting her up to where do I want her to have the ponytail or not. Kind of testing the rig right now to see does it work the way I want it to. A couple other things you may have noticed I did is there's an option in this to pose my to put my character at the very beginning, you'll kind of notice I do this, to kind of change her age a little bit, but that also may be a scale thing for you. Do you need to scale the character? Turning on and off her glasses. Do I want her to have glasses or not? So yeah, there's the age thing. Putting her arms in FK, making sure her arms are set to that global positioning, so her arms kind of stay in the orientation I want them to be in. And once I've gotten all of that set up, then I'm just going to leave that placement controller there and leave all of those settings like that. And then the rest of the time when I'm animating my character, watch what I'm doing here. I'm moving her feet controls and her placement control, right? I'm sort of sliding those two things. Also kind of have to slide her eye control as well. And I'm just moving her around the scene that way, right? So a couple things you'll notice I'm doing. I am definitely posing the hands and the fingers for every pose. Right? This will make my life so much easier when I'm closer to the end of this animation. And I'm interpreting those poses the best I can. What I'm doing is I'm taking the information from that video reference the best I can and interpreting that into a pose that is appealing, right? I want to sort of pause here for a second and say, recognize that if you are doing if you're taking something from your video reference, you're putting it into your animation, and it looks bad, like that was in the video reference, in quotes, is not like that doesn't fix it, right? It still looks bad, right? It still doesn't communicate correctly, right? And I've seen that before with people, like they've had a character who was falling, and the reason they were falling is because they were standing on something slick, but in the scene they weren't standing on anything slick. And I'm like, well, you can't just put a disclaimer on your film or on your game that said, oh, by the way, in the video reference, they were standing on something slick, right? It has to communicate on its own. And so the point of the video reference is to inform the decisions you make with the character, not it can't serve as an excuse. Like in the end, the only thing the audience sees is what's on the character, right? Does that make sense? So you'll see I'm choosing my key poses here. Now I only do 2 poses in this, and I want to show you which 2 they are. Like they're way far apart from each other, you'll notice. The first one I did was where the character first comes on screen, and then the second one I'm doing is where the character first makes contact with the tree, right? Those 2 were, in my opinion, important poses. Right? They were important to telling the story, right? Recognize I did the first step first, like the character first coming on screen. It's very tempting for your next pose that you do to be the next step the character takes, right? And that you work every step in until they get to the tree, right? Really, to me, think about this. This is blocking, right? And the term, like that term again, comes from the ways we would work in other media, right? If you were doing a sculpture of something and you were starting off with just a giant block of like granite, right? And the thing you were trying to make was shaped like a head, and you have a box, the first thing you need to do is start to get it more rounded, right? You need to start getting it closer to the shape of a head. And how you might do that is by chopping big chunks off of it that get you closer to that, right? You may chop off those like sharp corners on the box, right? You're blocking this out. You're chopping this down to the biggest, like I'm trying to say this. You're chiseling away at this challenge one little chunk at a time in the ways that will make the biggest impact, right? And so to me, I need to tell this story, and part of this story is this girl gets from the corner to the tree, right? It's not the girl takes exactly 2.5 steps to get from the corner to the tree, right? I can figure out some of those steps in between. I can't make this happen if where she ends up at is in the wrong spot, right? So I get those 2 things that are very important. When she comes on the screen, when she gets to the tree, and I make sure that I have that nailed down because I can figure out some of the stuff in between as I get to more detail, right? As I'm chopping more little chunks out of this sculpture, I can get to more detail and start refining it then. Right now I'm getting the biggest, like, clearest changes that I have to have, right? And so you can kind of see me posing this all the way through, getting that push off, getting her leaning in. I think, is this the one where at some point I realize I've made some mistakes? But you can tell I'm really like fighting with getting that spine, feeling like it's flowing, feeling like it's pushing, where if it's contacting. All of this is taking a while, right? Again, making sure I'm getting those hand poses as clear as I can. I'm thinking in terms of silhouette. Can you see her? Can you see her finger in the silhouette? I know she's, eventually we're going to see her face. And so rather than having to go back and wipe out animation, I'm at least getting some placeholder stuff on her face, right? And notice as I'm dragging here, there's a lot of information that is not being created there. All those little steps in between, I'm not working on those yet. Now this is the mistake I made. I want you to notice is this entire time that I've been working on this second pose, right? I had her wrong foot up on the tree. I misunderstood what was happening in my reference. And somewhere along there I realized, wait, it's actually the other foot that goes up on the tree. And I had to go back in here and sort of rework this pose. So I left my mistakes in there because those happen. This is part of the process. What I ended up with this for these two poses was a time-lapse video that is about 3.5 minutes, right? But I want to look at something else here again, kind of thinking in terms of silhouette there a lot at the end, making sure all that's very clear. I think I even tested out some poses before I wiped out the other pose. So, okay, let's stop this animation right here. I want to minimize this. Not minimize it, but make it a little smaller here, so we can look at the time. What is happening? So we can look at the time on my clock there. If you see that, that's 9:52 a.m. When I'm done with this, at the beginning of this time lapse is 9:18, right? Took me about 45 minutes just to get two poses done. Okay, recognize like that's pretty successful actually. I'm pretty happy with that amount of progress. This blocking pass, the more time you're putting into it, the more you're going to have a refined piece when it's over with. So don't feel like you're having to rush. And I think part of that is making sure you have enough time. So from here, I'm going on to pose number 3. Something that I felt was pretty important to be able to show this is where the character turns around. So I'm getting her, and also kind of, this is the peak of her climbing up this tree, right? She's going up it as high as she can before gravity takes a hold and starts to pull her back down, right? I got confused when I saw the clock down here, what time it is. So this is sort of the height of her reaching that peak, right? Because that's sort of the point of where she will start to flip from there. And again, I'm pushing the pose more than is in the character's pose, or more than is in the reference. And then this is a big change I needed to make. I went from her at the top of that tree, and I basically went to her being on the ground on the landing, at the point where she lands from jumping out of the tree, right? Recognize how much stuff I left out, right? How much stuff I just skipped over in doing that, right? I skipped over her turning. I skipped over her pushing off from the tree. I skipped over a whole bunch of stuff just to go from top of the tree to her landing pose, right? And the other thing, to get that landing pose, I have to rotate her 360 degrees. So halfway up there, I went ahead and put like an in the air pose, and you'll see what's happening in that in the air pose here in just a few seconds. I'll show you this in a little bit more detail. But a lot of what I'm fighting through here and getting this pose is making sure it reads clearly as a silhouette. You can see each of her feet. You can see at least clearly as I can her arms. I had a really hard time with this, like trying to get it to feel like her arms were loosely holding her knees in, because he reaches up and grabs his knees and tucks them in, but just for like one frame of this animation, right? And so that has to happen really briefly, really quickly. I'm trying to maintain my silhouettes, right? So you're seeing it at times I kind of skip back and forth. I'm also using the greater than, less than keys to get that. Now watch what's happening there. Isn't that nice? And so this is some areas where I still got a little bit more to go. I think I'm trying to get her hop back pose there a little bit. Let's see. Changing major elements of how she pushes off. So this is me creating the push off pose, I think. And really just refining in or putting in all of the elements necessary to get that flip to happen. Right. You also see me changing the height of that so we can see her higher. You also saw me go into the graph editor there briefly and set everything to stepped mode. Now in the process of doing this, let me back up there so you can see this happen. In the process of doing this, I realized to make that animation look good, she had to go up higher and she was going out of frame. So I readjust my camera just a little bit, but very early on, I had locked that camera in place. So I knew I was always animating to my render cam, right? I'm always animating to this camera. This is what is going to render, and that camera is usually locked. This other camera is so I can tumble around and make sure that stuff looks good in all angles. And you'll see right now as she does this flip, from this angle here, she actually warbles a little bit. Like she kind of doesn't land or she doesn't move in the way that you would expect her to. And so I had to go in there and kind of fix that arc in that as well. Maybe adjust my tree a little bit. There we go. So that's the flip blocked in. Again, looking at overall time in this, it's ending at 3:07 p.m. I started this part at 2:33, so it took me another 40 minutes just to block in that flip. Right, I'm approaching 2 hours on this project now of how much time I've put into it just blocking this stuff out. Now I want to show you this really quick. This is where I would be at this point. That's where I was at the end of that video. And that's in stepped mode. Now let me show you why I worked in stepped mode. Because this is in splined mode. Now, I don't know if you all can see that, but let me share this one more time with optimize for video sharing here. And we will loop this. So watch her when she flips here. Do you see that weird little what's happening there? Yeah, so she's jumping like she's flipping forward. Her arms are doing something crazy there, right? And she's getting up to this pose. And then she's actually rotating back the other way, right? And that's because Maya is just making decisions for me, right? And I want to acknowledge that, yes, that is something we have to fix. The important thing to acknowledge is it's not right now, right? This is not the phase in which we fix that. And that's really hard for people to overlook. One of the ways to do that is to make sure you're working in stepped mode, because then I'm just thinking about the pose, right? Again, the pose is what will tell my story for me. That little flip thing, that is so easy to fix later. And I'll show you actually how I fix that in, do I do it in this? Anyway, I show it in here somewhere. It may not even be until next class when we start going into the splining pass. So it's actually right here. This is where I did it. So one of the ways that I fixed that is I just made a new pose that said, no, we're going to rotate on around to get that flip to work. Right? And so really I just created a new pose that gave Maya a better indication of how this works or how I wanted this to work. And so I just added one extra pose to this to make that flip make more sense that she's rotating around this way. Now by default though, Maya's already set that keyframe and it may not know that that's what we need it to do. And so there's a tool inside of Maya that I think I run on some of this. Let's see if it shows that as we get a little further along here. So again, spending as much time as I can on this pose to make sure it's clear, make sure each of her feet are readable in that pose. There we go. Okay, so at this point, I don't remember, let's see if I didn't see me fix it. So at this point, Maya may interpret that better, but, okay, sorry. At this point, Maya may interpret that more clearly for me. Just because I've added that extra key when it comes to getting that transition. If it doesn't, that's where I would run the Euler filter. And so I don't remember if I do that in here, if I do that later. But right now, don't sweat it too much. Again, at this point, it's 8:57 on the time clock. I started at 8:42, so added an extra 20 minutes there, 10 minutes, something like that. Okay, squash and stretch, squash and end. So I got that last impact pose there, but I want to get this last thing he does where he sort of squashes down in there. I'm really trying to exaggerate that. And then one of my favorite parts of the entire animation is how he jumps back and he like hits this pose like he's ready to fight. That's like one of my favorite things. So I go in there and I'm putting in those extra little poses to make that happen. Again, thinking about how the feet are contacting there and always trying to keep in mind what my pose looks like to my camera, right? I'm always trying to make sure my silhouette is appealing to look at, that you can see all of the different elements, that all of that is as clear as possible. And in this case, I'm also still trying to borrow from the reference whenever I can to get something clear. Like he really, in his reference, he does this thing with both of his hands where he sort of pushes his palms out like he's trying to slow himself down. And you see, I even did one more time. I even adjusted the camera just a little bit to make sure that all of this is reading clearly. I have her do this like push up. That's where somebody sent me a message and I had to reply. And she does just a little bit of a jump. Pushing her face pose there a little bit to get that determination in it. So again, this is where some of the benefit of posing the hands comes in. Like, if she did not have her hands in that fist pose, this would not read the same, right? And so then I really just want her to look like she's ready to fight whatever it is that's coming next, right? Whatever it is that's going to, whatever it is she was originally running away from, right? All right. So, just looking at this again, time-wise, 9:25, started at 9, so that was essentially another 30 minutes of work on that, right? And this is where I am at this point, right? Okay, so I'll show you all this tool here once we get into the splining mode, but this is me using a tool called the tween machine. And the tween machine allows me, actually I won't show it when we get into blocking, I may show it here in a few minutes. But this is a free script you can download, and what it does is it allows you to more easily get in between poses. I use it mostly in the breakdown phase or the blocking plus phase. I was using it here just a little bit to get that next, those next few steps, right? And so again, what I'm doing here is anything that I feel like was unclear in the blocking, I'm making sure it's more clear. This was a really hard part of the animation, believe it or not, is this push off at the top. And also the way he sort of changes directions at the top. He's fighting gravity going up this tree, but he's also pushing against the tree, so he's fighting his forward momentum to push back. And he turns around halfway through that, right? That's a really complicated moment that happens over these next few, over this little section at the top of the tree. But even more difficult is he pushes off with enough force, side-to-side force, to drive himself forward, right? But enough upward force pushing upward and throwing his upper body downward to get that rotation, to get that centrifugal force, right? That twirl that has to happen for him to get that flip. And so really a lot of that push-off pose that I was working on there was to try to make sure that was reading clearly. And then finally, I think I'm getting like some settle pose here at the end where she can kind of settle in to the to that final pose. Okay. So remember earlier I said I need that key pose where she's first coming onto stage, and that key pose where she gets to the tree and I can figure out the steps in between. That's what I'm doing there, was figuring out those steps in between and adding any last minute poses that I feel like were necessary for this animation to read clearly. So again, just looking at timing on this, it's at 5:31 p.m. I started at 5 on that part of it. And I would say, like, I haven't added it up, but my estimate of how long it took me to get from nothing to this blocking pass was somewhere in the neighborhood of about 5 hours. So, sorry, I like having the video panel. So the last thing I'll show you is where I was at the end of the blocking pass. Like, what constituted blocking for me. So you'll still notice some of the things that are missing in this. I don't have every little bit of the run cycle figured out yet. I do have the point where the character's feet contact the ground. And something you will notice from the reference is it's different than how I used, or how the character's feet contact the ground in the reference. He does this thing, which is probably beneficial to him, where he does a whole bunch of tiny, really fast steps, right? Everywhere he goes in all of his video reference. Like in the distance he covers there, he probably takes like 4 steps. I wanted it to make it look like she was really running at this tree, like she was running away from something. So I shortened the number of steps she took there, right? It made it look less noisy in the way she ran, and it looked a little bit more determined and confident, which is part of what I'm going for in this animation. And so this would be what I would consider blocking. Now again, this is in stepped mode. And I guess before I go on from that, the reason I consider this blocking is because I know what my next step is. My next step is to start to refine how my character gets from major pose to major pose. And I know that everything I needed to define in all my major poses are pretty much here, right? Think of it this way. If you had to pass this off to another animator, could they take what you've given them here and get something that was close to your original vision for this, right? If they couldn't, if they're like, I have no idea what's happening here, I have to invent that myself, then maybe your blocking isn't done yet, right? So again, the reason I'm watching this in stepped is because when I watch it in auto, it just doesn't look as good. Like, it's still got that little flip in there, even though I added that extra pose. That little flip is still in there, and I think I do. Let me look really quick here. I think I cover that very quickly in the next video, so I just want to make sure. But basically, all I do to fix that little flip is that there's a shortcut key, not a shortcut key. There's a thing in the graph editor that you run. I'll show you right here in the graph editor. It's right here. Curves, Euler filter, right? And that will totally fix that little flip that we're seeing in there, right? But even without that, like if we're still watching this splined, like it just doesn't look as good splined, right? This doesn't feel like I'm anywhere near as finished, right? This feels like totally terrible, right? The stepped mode version, like, is understandable. I got timing in there. I got like this energy to it. It's got a lot of stuff in it. This feels like I've clearly executed something, right? And when I talk about that positive feedback loop, that encouragement that you're giving yourself, this feels encouraging. I can look at this and be like, all right, this is going to turn into a good animation, right? This feels like I've chosen the wrong career. I should have majored in accounting, right? Like this does not feel like I know what I'm doing to me. And it definitely isn't going to make any sense if I show it to somebody else. They'll be like, what's that weird thing she does with her arms? And why does she flip weird? And like, this doesn't convey the information. The timing doesn't feel there. It doesn't feel punchy when she hits the ground at the end, right? None of that feels right to me, right? So eventually I'll have to look at this in splined. Eventually I'll have to start trying to get the feeling that I'm getting in my blocked stepped pass into my splined pass, right? I'm going to have to start refining that in for my transitions to get that punchiness back into it. All of that stuff is something I'll have to get to eventually. But what's really the danger is if you're looking at this in auto, if you're looking at this in splined, it's going to feel like you don't know if you're actually hitting your target yet, right? It's very discouraging to look at it this way, and it's very tempting to start to try to fix those little problems that are everywhere in this. And that's not where we're at yet. That is not this stage of the process. So one of the reasons I hammer very heavily on process is like, it is the process that people have been using for almost 100 years now. It's proven. We know that this process can get you to where you need to be, but not if you sidetrack. Not if you're like, oh, got to go over here and fix this thing first and then fix this thing. By the time you get to splining, you're going to have a mess that you can't clean up. This is like the organizational structure, right? That allows you to be able to proceed. So, okay. Questions? Comments? I did that thing again where I talked too much, didn't I? Yeah, let's do that. So, hopefully it's beneficial. Hopefully you get something out of this. So again, shooting video reference. Next class period, try to come in with some video reference. So you're ready to start blocking. Next class period is primarily going to be more work time. There's going to be less of me talking over all of that. What I probably am going to have you do though is meet up with your groups very early on in class next time to get some idea about which video reference you want to use. So you know. Good question. Do you have to shoot your own, or can we use YouTube? You can use YouTube. Here's the like sometimes when you're using YouTube, you're settling for what you can find, right? There's some stuff like you don't have an option to use YouTube. It's like I don't have a pet giraffe, so if I need giraffe reference, I just have to scrounge and find what I want from YouTube. Very rarely is the YouTube video going to be exactly the thing you wanted, right? Or sometimes it is something that's really complicated to do, like parkour or something like that. And so at that point, you know, it's like, I can't do that. I don't know anybody who can do that. I have to use YouTube video as a reference. However, for most of the stuff in this, you should be able to get a version of your reference too. What I would say is if you're going to use YouTube, most likely you or someone you know can still do the same reference too. So use YouTube as one of your references, not your only reference, right? So it may be like, I really liked how this character did this one thing in this YouTube video, but like you're crafting a performance or you're crafting an animation, you're crafting this action that's going to take place. So be in control of that, not just use what you find, right? So it may be one of the references you use, but yeah, I would say at least for this project, I don't know that there was anything in there that is like, you know, if it's some action you can't do, like your character's going to do a front flip off of the box when they're done, then yeah, you can use YouTube for that. However, you could still shoot the reference of you climbing up onto the box, right? I will say it doesn't have to be reference of you. You can use your friends. Seems like every semester we have the resident acrobat like the resident person who ends up being in everybody's video reference because they're good at shooting video reference. And so, you know, if you have a friend who's like, oh yeah, you'd be better at this, like that's fine, use that. The video reference isn't a graded element, but it is part of like your mentor's check-in. So like really, if that's a participation grade and you show up and you say, I didn't shoot any video reference, well then you're not really participating. And so that will that will come back in that version of it. I'm not going to take them up, and I'm not going to like, I understand that they can be a little embarrassing. I will say I got so much good resources of people's embarrassing video references. I've had students in the past who shared their video reference with me. Who was it? Brooke. Do I have Brooke's video reference in here somewhere? Where she basically, she was shooting video reference in the restroom because there was a mirror there. And she was like doing this like sneak animation. And she like bumps into the hairdryer and the hairdryer comes on. There's some video reference that Destin shot several years ago where he's trying to pick something up and he breaks it. Like you're going to have like those little like blooper moments that happen. Save those. Like someday, even if it's embarrassing now, someday you're going to be like, that's hilarious. I'm glad I saved that, right? Okay. Other questions? Comments? Okay, so something I do want to point out, I have not really met with the people who are repeating the course to talk about their project list that much. Several of you have emailed me yours. So here's my thoughts. Let me share this. What I would like to do is maybe do a breakout room. Well, I don't know if we even need to. Maybe we'll just do it like I think there's like 6 people in here who are repeating the course. Let me see where I'm at. Go ahead and share my screen. Close that. And find D2L again. Nope. So in course home, this is our group. So we got Carissa, Michael, Alex, Hayden, Elijah, and Nathan. I kind of want to chat with you a little bit and see like what your plans are, at least for the first project. I recognize I do need you to kind of email me those as well, so we have like a plan. Does everybody feel okay saying project 3 is the revision project, or does anybody feel like they need to move that further up the list of when we do that? I'll go ahead and switch that back out.
Project 3 for revision is doable.
That works.
Okay. The reason I say that is because that lets you get some stuff done between now and midpoint. It doesn't mean that you shouldn't polish any or shouldn't revise anything between now and midpoint. Because I know a portion of you are in portfolio right now. I know not everybody is, but and so that's something you're probably going to be considering. Like one of the reasons I put it after project 3 is that project usually happens right after your midpoint portfolio presentation. And that's when people like come back and they're like, they tore this piece apart, like what do I do? And I'm like, let's revise it. And then we talk about some revision techniques. Having said that, you should be like revising pieces anyway, but that's one that we can kind of hit with some techniques with it. And it gives you a little bit of time in this first half of the semester to make a couple of new pieces. So that kind of opens up that question. What are you all thinking for your first project? I mean, I could go through the emails, but that's more for my records, like so we can talk about them as a whole scope. Anybody doing a creature for your first project?
I know one of my projects is going to involve creatures.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I think I wanted my last one. I think I wanted it to be a creature one. My first one, I was planning on doing the advanced game set.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was either gonna do a creature for the first or do the. I was also debating if I wanted to attempt the fight between 2 people one.
So if
know
you're
yet.
doing the fight between 2 people and that ends up being a double project, you may want to do that first. That way you don't have, because you got 2 projects back to back there. So the reason I'm asking this is, let me read in the chat too, in case Carissa or anybody else, Alex is typing in there. So the reason I'm asking that is I want to start getting you all some custom lectures for repeating the class. And as it is right now, if I go back to our schedule, today's the day we cover blocking, but next class period is a little bit more open work time, right? And so that means I don't have a lecture really planned that I'm going to cover too much then. What else that means is that I could use some of that time to do some custom lectures for something you all are interested in doing. So think about that just for a second, and of something that you might like to hear a specific lecture on next class period that would address the people repeating. In the meantime, I want to share this really quick just as a note and a reminder. We will have major milestone check-ins on this project. So project 1, like right now, we're assigning it today. A week from today, I'm wanting to see your blocking progress. And so really this is just a pass-fail check-in, right? I'll put a folder up there. You'll drop it in there. We'll look at it, and I may give you a little bit of notes on it, but it's going to be very similar to what we did with the, it's not going to be a full-on critique, right? And so that'll happen a couple of times in between this. So we'll see a blocking check-in, a breakdown check-in, and then the final project is due the 16th, and that's right before we go on that first little short break, right? So I just wanted to remind you that those check-ins are in there as well. Next class period, though, primarily is going to be time for us to be working, and so that's one of the reasons I'm kind of asking the repeating class right now if there's anything specific you would like me to talk about. I was asking about creature because I would like to do a creature animation lecture sometime in the next little while here. More about posing, like how creatures work a little bit. I think I could, I don't have everything sort of pulled together just yet for that, but I could by next class period. And we could at least do the beta test run of that. I guess it would be more the alpha test run of that lecture if y'all are interested in that. But if people are wanting to wait a little while and put that off, like that may not be addressing what you all are thinking of doing right now. So, other ideas?
I can't really think of any.
Doesn't
I mean, yeah, because like I do definitely want to do a creature one for at least somewhere down the line of this class, but I don't know if I'm immediately doing it yet. If everyone else is immediately doing it, then I'll immediately do it. But
I'm not immediately doing it, but I did have a thought that I don't know if Greg's ever actually shown us how to do is animating with props.
I do have, I have that kind of planned to layer into, sorry, I'm looking at my list here. I have something set up for that once we get into the pantomime animation for the people who are taking it the first time. And that's because really pantomime, they're always interacting with something. That's a pain in the butt. But yes, I could do that. Let me make a note of that. Is that something that you all would need sometime soon here?
I was just throwing out ideas that.
Okay, I mean that's one I could squeeze in there. I could do if I did the creature one, it would be just because I'm doing that lecture now doesn't mean you have to do that project now. It just means you hear it now, and it may not be as relevant to what you're currently working on. Does props help more? Keep in mind some of the other options. Some of you may have already been to it, but I also did a workshop over the break on it's called How to Get Paid. It's basically like career advice stuff. We could have like a little question and answer session of stuff like that. And it could be stuff like, I mean, everybody will be in the same class, so everybody who's taking it the first time would hear some of this stuff too. It would sort of seep in through osmosis. So it's, you know, it can be anything, or it can be a reiteration of something. So.
The prop one would be relevant. I don't know how relevant it would be. Since I'm doing like the game Anim set, but my game Anim set that I plan on doing does involve props, so because the character is going to be holding objects and whatnot and making cycles out of those.
Some of you also who are in my 3D animation class, I did a motion capture lecture as well that was kind of neat for the people who are interested in doing motion capture. Oh, that's not the direction I was going for. There we go. None of these. There we go. That's where I wanted to be. Sorry, adjust my eye. So yeah, so we got. What was the last thing you said, Michael? I'm sorry.
I said the props would be relevant because as far as like my game Anim set goes, it does involve props.
Okay, cool. By the way, I want to do my run and idle animation first, and then my lip sync, and then my revision. I also want to do an attack animation. I need to teach that in class. I think that's my plan of what I want to do. Oh, I might want a lecture on motion capture if anyone else would. Okay, let me make a couple of notes on our schedule. Mocap, props. And then, anybody interested in flight?
I'd be interested in looking
Light.
at flight.
I'd be interested in
Like
that.
birds
Yeah.
flying? Okay.
Yeah.
So the notes that I made of a couple of lectures, mocap, props, creature. When I said creature at first, I assumed quadruped, and then also like possibly like a flight lecture. Those are all lectures that could probably be pretty quick. Right, really, it's just some of the things to go over. I will say some of that stuff, like the flight stuff, I could probably point you to resources that would do a better job of communicating some of that information than a lecture would. But still, that might be a couple of options. So. And yeah, I think Carissa, I think that plan sounds pretty good. So anything else you can come up with, let me know. Sorry, I interrupted somebody. What was that?
I was going to say, speaking of resources, do you have the animator's like job work spreadsheet up on D2L2?
I don't, but it's actually, well, it's part of that that animation resource kit. I think they list it there. I'll go ahead and share my screen on this one because this is something that everybody will probably eventually want. It's beautiful. If you just search animation job spreadsheet, you see like it auto populates. It knows what I'm looking for. It's actually probably because I've done this before. So this is like it's always like the first like 5 posts you find here. But it's this Google Doc that this guy named Chris Main is maintaining. And basically it's any jobs in sort of the animation and sort of digital media careers. He's sort of keeping this stockpile of them, right? All on this spreadsheet. But it is also listed in, what was that earlier? In the course info, I think. No, it's under resources. The animation resource kit. I think it's under this somewhere too. It's like spreadsheet or something. Jobs. Yeah, industry job spreadsheet. The funny thing is, I don't think Orca exists anymore. It was actually pretty cool, but there's a new place I did see. It was called, I think it was called Work with Indies. Yeah, that's a new place where you can find some like indie jobs as well. But this thing is awesome for those of you who are not familiar with it. It's like, if you notice in let's start in yellow here. Like these blue ones are people who like, I don't know if they're like sponsored or something like that to help them keep the thing going. Everything in yellow right here. Scroll, scroll, scroll. That's stuff he posted today, right? That's how many jobs he's posted today on this thing. It's got everything from modelers to project manager, UI, UX. But since it's in a spreadsheet, one of the real cool things about it is you can sort that based off of a job title, right? If you're looking to be a writer, there's some of the writer jobs. If you're looking to be, let's do it the other way. It is the 2D artist, 2D animator, I'm sure is in here somewhere. 3D artist, and then we get down here, animation director, animation development intern, animation supervisor, animation TD, animator 2D, animator 3D. Here we go. And so this is just some of the different animation jobs that have been posted in the last few weeks. Page after page, right? One of the other things that I like about this is you can also sort it based on whether it's remote, in-house, or both. And so that'll give you some interesting results there. So the remote jobs, it's like, oh, 2D animator, remote for this place in Canada. Cool, right? But yeah, I never really save the link. I always just Google it. So what level would we apply for? I think intern, junior, or if it just says animator. Mid-level usually means you have a few years experience. Senior usually means probably a little bit more experience than that, to where you would be. Senior usually means you're supervising somebody. So recognize that like some places there's only one animator, so there's not levels. So it's just like you're the animator on this team. If you all are interested in that workshop thing I did, it's actually on YouTube. It's just called How to Get Paid. It's under the Greg Marlowe Learning page, which I need to, if you just search Greg Marlowe Learning on YouTube, you'll find it. It's actually what I turn on when we leave our dog at home so she can hear my voice. Because it's like 3 hours long. And so it doesn't always work, but like sometimes I'll do that. And so now my dog knows how to get a job in animation. She just doesn't have the skills. So anyway, but that's got a lot of this information in it on like searching for the industry jobs. So all right, other questions, comments? All right. Every time I'm like, today's going to be a short lecture. Like, how do I do that? I stretched it. So anyway, hopefully there was still some reasonable information in there that was helpful. Let me know if you have any questions along the way, and go start making animations. And so, if any of the people who are repeating need to chat some more, feel free to hang around. Otherwise, though, the rest of the class is yours. So. Thanks. Yeah.
All right, Greg.
Yep.
Yeah, I don't know if I ever told you yet, but what I do plan on doing is an advanced anim set, and I'm hoping to make that 2 projects long. Then it was going to be the revision and creature.
Okay. If you get a
the
chance,
only-
would you mind sending that to me in an email? Just so
Okay, yeah, I can send it to you in an email.
Just so I have it. I would really like to put together all of that into a spreadsheet, assuming I can find a little time to do that, just so I can kind of look and be like, oh, these 2 people are talking about this. I can like maybe even have like a smaller like individual meeting with y'all or something like that. So.
Okay. The question that I had was like for people that are doing one that's 2 projects long. What are the milestones for that?
Oh, yeah, that's kind of up to you on what it is you want to. Basically, the whole project is due at the end of the second project.
Yes.
but you'll still want to show something at the end of the first project, right?
Okay.
And so that's really dependent on what it is you're doing. So for you, you're doing a whole set. Maybe what you would have is the whole set in the engine functioning and blocked, right? Or like at least like your main key poses or something like that. So you can show the functionality of that whole set. And then maybe by that point you've already polished one or two of them, right? Because that somehow makes more sense than doing half of the animations fully and having nothing on the others, because that's just not how you would do that in a game set. But some people who are doing like, you know, 2-character interaction, maybe they have one character completely finished and the other character is just in layout mode, right? Or maybe they do both characters up to blocking and that's what they show for their milestones. So it really kind of depends. I'll let you, like, really what ends up happening is I usually give you a placeholder grade for grade 1. And then after I give you the second grade, I go back and plug that into the first grade as well, right? So like you'll get like a 1 on your first project out of 25 points. And then I go back after you do the second project, and like let's say it's a 24, you get a 24 on project 1 and 2, right? And I just leave it in the notes that this was for that project and it was connected. So
Yeah.
so.
All right. Yeah. Okay. That's all the questions I had. Thank you.
Cool. Anytime. Anything else? Well, feel free to hang around, but I know there's probably another class coming in here before too long. I'm going to go ahead and move all of those files into a subfolder for the step animation. I am poorly organized. Y'all just hanging out?
I think I'm gonna go fix myself a bit.
Okay.
I think I'm gonna go get myself a little bit of lunch.
Yeah. I have my wife packed for me a Cliff Bar. So I too
nice.
will eat my Cliff Bar soon. And a Coke Zero because it keeps me going.
Hey, that's nice.
Yeah.
All right, so I hope you enjoy.
You too.
All right, see you later.
See ya.
Yeah, I'm gonna go too.
Okay.
I was more or less just enjoying a moment of peace.
It's quiet.
Because basically I worked nonstop from 10:30 to 11 yesterday.
Dude, that one came out good. Was that on the step mode, or are you talking about worked like at a job?
No, just on schoolwork.
All right.
And the majority of that was trying to figure out how to do a texture in Substance, and then another few hours trying to figure out how to put it into Unreal. Didn't get that to work.
Actually, a lot of those step animations came out really good. I was pretty happy with how those turned out. So.
I couldn't figure out what I was doing wrong with the arm, so I just kind of was like, I'm just gonna leave it for now. Go to bed.
That's something else. Line checklist.
I sent you an email. Apparently, 2 pop up when I type in Greg Marlowe in an email.
Yeah, I don't know. They're both going to the same place. One is probably Marlowe G@ETSU, and the other is Greg.digm at Gmail.
But with the last project, I'm not entirely sure what I'm doing. I might be tired of humans. So I might be doing a creature just for something different.
Okay. Well, if you don't know what you're doing for the last one, that's okay. Like, what I would say is you probably will by the time you get to the last one.
Hopefully.
You'll probably have a good idea by that point. So. Mm-hmm.
Okay. I'm
Yep.
just gonna leave my stuff in here and go get some lunch.
Sounds good.
What would be with all this going on,
Mm-hmm.
being remote and everything, what would be the best way to set up a meeting with like Osteen?
Send her an email.
Okay.
She was right over there a minute ago. Actually, ooh, that reminds me. I wonder if Marty Henley's still in his. Let me hop out really quick. I gotta run and see if I can catch somebody. But she was. I heard her in the other room in there. So she still comes in, but I think she checks her mail. I don't think she does a lot of office time in the building. She's probably doing mostly like stuff from home. She
It was
doesn't-
just more of I know we've never really met each other, so she has, assuming, no idea what I've done.
No, and she can give you some good animation feedback too. So, yeah, just do you know her email address?
I can look it up.
Yeah, I think yeah. If you can't find it, let me know and I'll find it for you and send it to you. So.
Well, I'm gonna hop out now as well.
Cool, sounds good. I'll be right back, John. If you have any questions.